Ladies and gentlemen, for 2 years now, we are living in the world of AI. With ChatGPT turning all of us from self-thinking human beings to machine-dependent prompt engineers, simple tasks have changed dramatically. A couple of days ago, on January 27th, the tech stock market crashed down billions of dollars. The reason for that, DeepSeek, an AI that is supposed to be even better than ChatGPT or Gemini. Now, I'm not going to act as if I knew a lot about AI or chatbots, but I have some experience when it comes to sports. In a previous video, I already asked ChatGPT to give advice for endurance running, and the results were, let's say, interesting.
Run with your arms restrained. Lightly restrain your arms using a resistance band or by holding them close to your torso while running. This forces your legs to generate more momentum without the aid of arm swing, building leg power and core strength. It also improves your awareness of how much you rely on your arms for balance, helping refine your form.
It's been a while since the last video, but I was sick and my voice completely useless, so here we are again. Now, in this video, I want to try something a little different. We will have ChatGPT, the veteran, fight against this year's rookie DeepSeek and show how they compare as coaches and advisors in sports. So how are we going to do that? We will give both chatbots the exact same tasks and compare the quality of their answers. I will rate all of the answers in number 1, understandability. I think it is important that you understand what your coach wants you to do. There shouldn't be too much room for interpretation. Number 2, reasonableness. So how much sense does the advice actually make? And number 3, extent. To what extent does the chatbot give advice on what to do? A simple train more would be reasonable, but too little of a coaching advice to be any useful.
Cheetah Sports.
With these standards set in place, let's go to the task for the chatbots. Since I cover a variety of sports, both team and individual, the task will focus on different aspects, some on training, some on teamwork, and others on entirely different topics. Also, I will vary the questions in difficulty as well as in detailness, so we can see the differences. Now, I won't read out the entire answer, but there is a link in the description to an article with the full conversations. I've picked 5 questions. The first one is, create a trainings program for beginner going to the gym for the first time. The idea behind this question is kind of obvious. It is supposed to check if the AI has any feeling for what is important to tell a beginner who has no idea what they're actually doing. The beginner has no idea about splits, progressive overload, or a certain time frame. So let's see how the AIs handle that. ChatGPT set up a 3 days per week plan and recommended to do this plan for about 6 to 8 weeks. I really like the brief introduction of the beginning of the answer. Goal, nice. Duration, pretty alright for a beginner to get into it. Workout split, very reasonable for a beginner, and mentioning rest days also is very important. The warm-up ChatGPT recommends is very standard, but definitely fair. It could be a little more specific depending on what muscle group you're working on the given day, but that's nuances. Alright, so let's get into the first workout day. To me, this feels like ChatGPT thought it's supposed to be a full body workout. That means I need to put something in for each part of the body. The exercises picked are a little random in my opinion. The volume could be much larger, but to give credit for something, I like the idea of doing 3 full body workouts and having a different approach for each of the 3 days. For beginners, this could work pretty well. Having 1 day for strength and stability is very valid as a beginner. Day 2 is equally random. If you want to work on strength endurance, you would do much more reps than just 10 or 12. I don't really see any of these exercises improve your endurance. Maybe the rowing machine, but there's much more effective stuff than that. Last but not least, day 3 is completely random and it could have much more volume even for beginners. Now, I like the cool down. The stretching could be a little more, but that's alright. The additional tips are also great. I wish there was more detail on nutrition and progressive overload. Overall, it's nothing crazy. I would say you can use it for some sort of baseline, but there's much more out there on the internet that would help beginners even more. So, quick rating. For understandability, I'd say 6 out of 10. I guess most of it is understandable for the average beginner, but I'm not sure if the words Goblin Squat, TRX rows, or progressive overload are that simple, it could use much more explanation. Next is reasonableness. I'd say 7 out of 10. Now, this is more difficult to judge. For most of the days, it's a little random in my opinion, but concept-wise, the plan is actually decent. The idea of 3 times per week with full body workouts is great. It's just executed horribly. So let's say 7. Last but not least, the extent. I mean, it's maximum a 4 out of 10. This one's pretty easy to judge. This plan needs to be much more detailed, needs more volume, and so on and so on. Now let's compare this to the DeepSeek advice. Introduction. The introduction is alright, a little too much unnecessary talking in my opinion, but acceptable. Also, 4 weeks might not be enough for beginners. Of course, some progress can be made, but not really a lot. For getting someone comfortable with working out and increasing their confidence, I would rather make it 6 to 8 weeks, like in ChatGPT's version. Next are the key principles. I have nothing really to add here. Then there's a weekly schedule, which I really like for giving a clear structure. Now, I personally think this schedule might be a little too much for a beginner. There are only 2 real recovery days in a week, maybe 3 if you count day 7, but everyone who's done yoga before knows that this can be quite exhausting. I think especially for beginners, it should be a little more than just 2 rest days. Also, planning to do 4 to 5 workout days is easier said than done as a beginner. If you are a personal trainer, try to have your athletes build a habit first. In my opinion, starting off with 2 to 3 days per week works much better doing that. Let's get to the exercises. DeepSeek recommends to do the same workout on days that have the same intention. For day 1 and 4, I like the warm-up. Just as with ChatGPT, it's not really specific for the muscle groups we are working on that day, but it's alright. The rest seems a bit random to me again, and it could use much more volume. Now, I think the sets per muscle group per week are alright, but not perfect. As a beginner, it's a good start. Day 2 and 5, cardio and core. Now, this is a decent idea since we only ask for a gym plan. Working on all aspects of fitness just makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the recommendation of 20 to 30 minutes of cardio for completely different machines. 20 minutes of cycling and 20 minutes of treadmill have completely different effects since running on the treadmill activates much more muscle groups than cycling. The core workout, on the other hand, is surprisingly well. Day 3 and 6 is for recovery, and this advice is very decent in my opinion. Same applies for day 7, flexibility, just decent. After that, DeepSeek explains how to do progression, which is very important in my opinion. Switching up the plan after 1 to 2 weeks, however, is way too early. Also, splitting workouts into upper-lower body is not necessary at that point. It could be done later, but not after 2 weeks. The additional tips listed below are fair. I really like the ask for help and be patient part, even though the plan itself is not really patient. Scores for this plan: understandability, say 7 out of 10, a little better than ChatGPT because of the more details it's giving. Reasonableness, now in my opinion, that's like a 5 out of 10. It's too much per week for a beginner to build a habit, while at the same time switching up too early after 2 weeks. Now the extent, well, again, I'd say 5 out of 10. It could have much more volume and more reasonable choice of exercises. So let's compare all of this. Both the plans are alright for beginners. Every beginner will make progress no matter what they do, even if they do those plans. However, they could be much more efficient. I'm really missing a philosophy or any kind of logic how the exercises were picked. My advice would be do compound exercises, so those which work on many different muscle groups instead of just one isolated. Do stuff like squats, pull-ups, bench press, or deadlift. Also, ask someone to show you proper form. I really prefer the approach of ChatGPT of doing 3 times per week for 6 to 8 weeks. However, the explanation of DeepSeek were a little bit better. I think if you put in more time and effort to do some prompt engineering, you could create a better result, but you're probably better off if you just ask a trainer at your local gym. Now, not all gyms are great, just do some research beforehand. First round, however, goes to ChatGPT for having a better structure. The second question I came up with was very broad on purpose, hoping I would get very different answers. Give me a list of the most important things to work on to become more athletic. I made a video on that topic before, and there's a lot of things you can mention. By the way, I hope you can tell how much work these videos are. YouTube gave me the chance of setting up the channel member feature. Feel free to check that out. The rookie tier starts at less than €2 a month, so even less than one single can of Red Bull at your local gas station. Thanks for your support. ChatGPT was very straightforward with its answer. 7 key areas mentioned, and in my opinion, there is not much to comment on here. It's not very detailed or anything, but overall, all the 7 aspects are valid points. I especially like number 5, coordination and balance, since this is oftentimes overlooked by people, but makes a huge difference when it comes to moving as an athlete. Now, there's not much more to comment, so I'll just go over to the ranking. Understandability, that's an 8. Everything is explained well. Could be a little more detailed here and there, but that's alright. Reasonableness, I'd say a 7. All of the 7 points mentioned are valid. Nothing more, nothing less, so 7. Extent, well, this one is a 5, I guess. There could be much more information. And spoiler, DeepSeek did a way better job here. Okay, so let's talk about DeepSeek. DeepSeek gave us not 7, but 14 things to work on. The first part is pretty similar to ChatGPT, so I will just skip over most of it. Just like ChatGPT, it is not really detailed, but at least there are words like plyometric training or functional movements in it. So if you're interested, you can start some research from this point. Much better. Also, DeepSeek recommended to work on sport-specific skills. So if you're a basketball player, for example, working on your ball handling and dribbling will help you be faster running with the ball. What ChatGPT didn't mention at all, but what is very important, is injury prevention and mind-body connection. Both are an absolute game changer to work on as athletes. Now, the ratings for DeepSeek are pretty easy. Understandability, 8, everything is explained well. Could be a little more detailed, same as for ChatGPT. Reasonableness, also 8. I didn't really expect more from an AI. All the points mentioned make perfect sense. Extent, 8, also way better than ChatGPT. In this one we have a clear winner, and that is DeepSeek. More tips, more important tips. Still not perfect, but definitely better than ChatGPT. Question number 3. How can I improve my 5K personal best from sub 20 minutes to sub 15 minutes? Create a detailed training program and explain key elements of the workouts. You notice how this question is much longer than the previous ones, and this is because I wanted it to be much more specific. For all of those who are not runners or don't know if a sub 15-minute 5K is any good, let me tell you, it's good. It's really good. And to be honest, most people will never be able to achieve this. It takes such an absurd amount of training and conditioning paired with almost perfect diet that it's just too much for most athletes. And ChatGPT actually acknowledges that in its first sentence before proceeding with pretty nonsensical programs. There is no universe where someone's personal best currently is a 20-minute 5K, improves their time by 5 minutes in just 12 weeks. That's just not how it works. Even though the key components ChatGPT mentioned are pretty on point, building an aerobic base takes much longer than just 4 weeks. I will skip most over the workouts ChatGPT recommends, even though the theory behind them is decent, but it just doesn't make any difference if you only do them for 4 weeks. Now, if you were a beginner, those workouts were totally fine, but as someone who already does 20-minute 5Ks, you have an aerobic base that needs more than just 4 weeks to improve. In week 5 to 8, ChatGPT recommends doing speed works. And yes, that's good theory, but still the volume is just not enough. Only week 9 to 12, where ChatGPT recommends race prep and tapering, can be used copy and paste. Usually you don't need much more for that. If you are not familiar with tapering is the phase in your training program where you lower your volume the weeks before your competition to prepare for it. So that's the ChatGPT plan. The rating for that is pretty average, I guess. Understandability like 6. Reasonableness 4, should be much more. extend also for, I think I mentioned enough reasons for that. On to the DeepSeek answer, and to be honest, this was actually surprisingly well. Now I don't want to go into detail, but let's say this much. DeepSeek nailed the volume. At least it recommends a 3 to 5 month plan, which in my opinion is way more realistic if, and that's an important one, if you commit to it 100%. In the DeepSeek program, we start out with a 6 weeks aerobic base, which is much better than the few weeks ChatGPT told us to. The 4 to 6 weeks speed development phase also makes more sense, and DeepSeek even included a race-specific training phase in the program of 4 to 6 weeks. Only after that we start the taper phase and race preparation. Now, I don't really think the key workout explanations are necessary. I'm sure someone who runs a sub 20-minute 5K knows them, but it's a nice to have. DeepSeek closes the answer with some final thoughts, in which DeepSeek explains that this plan requires discipline and dedication. So how do we rate this? For understandability, I guess a 9. Everything was explained well, sometimes even more than I expected. Reasonableness, 7. Some workouts could be rearranged a little different, but overall pretty good. Extent, also 7. It is way better than the one by ChatGPT. Still, there's room to improve it, but it's a great base to start working from. With that, the category goes to DeepSeek, absolutely no doubt. Next question, this one's one for my team players. I don't really know what to expect from this question, and to be fair, there's not really a right or wrong. How can I prepare for my basketball game tomorrow evening? This one is a fictional scenario, let's see how the AI answers. ChatGPT gave me a pretty decent structured answer with some emojis as visuals. I don't really know why it did that. It definitely didn't do it at some point before, but hey, why not? The first part of its answer focused on physical preparation. There isn't really anything to complain about. It's on point, just decent. Next is mental preparation. This one is also decent advice in my opinion. However, I would love to see ChatGPT stress looking at plays and stuff again, since they are necessary and essential in basketball. Last but not least, it has the section game day routine, which is also very reasonable. I really love the hype part, since it is not only very helpful for every player, but also a huge part in the basketball community. Overall, it's good. Nothing crazy, but decent. So here's the rating. DeepSeek has a longer approach than ChatGPT. A little more and detailed physical preparation, decent mental preparation, and a nice game day routine. But there were 3 more categories DeepSeek mentioned. One is the logistical preparation, which I really like. Especially checking your gear and team communications are crucial in my experience. The second thing DeepSeek lists that ChatGPT doesn't is during the game. This is not really what I asked for, but again, nice to have if only there was any helpful advice in it. Stay composed, communicate, and play smart are 3 things so obvious that it's not even worth mentioning. Every normal coach will tell you this about 10 times per game. The last thing DeepSeek talks about is post-game recovery, which I also like, but was not really part of the question. However, it is important for every good athlete, so I will let it pass. Here's the quick rating for DeepSeek. Now, they both were good, but nothing crazy. To be fair, I didn't expect any magical answer here. I can't really tell if one of them was better. I preferred DeepSeek's advice on logistical prep, but the ChatGPT's advice on hyping pre-game, because this suits the basketball bubble pretty good in my opinion. So, no clear winner here. This makes the last one the decision on which AI wins this duel. Again, something for my team players. The prompt is: I am playing in my local high school football team currently as a reserve cornerback. How can I make the starting squad? Again, a pretty general question, also a fictionary scenario. So let's go. ChatGPT starts listing 10 strategies, of which most are fairly basic. Understand the playbook, work on your skills, and practice hard are pretty obvious. The explanations for that are also not really substantial. What I like, however, is be a team player. Ask for help and showcase your skill in training. Again, if you think about making the starting squat, you will figure this out by yourself, but at least those points are more valuable than just work harder. DeepSeek is very similar in its recommendations, so I will skip most of it. I really like stand out in practice, talk to your coaches, and watch and learn. Again, this isn't anything crazy, but it definitely helps. In my opinion, what you want to focus on is work on fundamentals and get the attention of your coaches. Show them that you can adapt to certain play styles and that you're not there playing for yourself, but to help your team win. I guarantee there is not a single coach out there who doesn't like this kind of player and will give you your chance eventually. Now, both of the answers were pretty similar, so I will rate them the exact same way, which makes DeepSeek win closely. So if you are whatever type of athlete and you want to improve at your sport, I think it is worth giving the AI a shot. Try having a chat with each of them. I don't think one of them is substantially better at anything. And think about the answers. What can you take from them? What doesn't really make sense? And what should you learn more about? Also, for all of those who didn't notice, AI is now part of our lives. It won't go away. It rather will become much more important in the future, so learn to deal with it. With that being said, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.